Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 26 of Black VegFest Breakout Podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Mariscal. Also, you can find me under Instagram, Panarican Vegan, and Sabrosa Vegana, which is my business. But most importantly, I am an organizer for Black VegFest, and I've been hosting a series on colorism in the Latinx community. Why? Let's go back a little bit as to this is part four of our series, and I'm just going over a little bit about what we spoke about before in the last three parts of our series. So again, for everyone just joining in, my name is Jillian Mariscal. I am one of the Black Veg Fest organizers and have been hosting a series here on colorism in the Latinx community. Hi, everybody. Good to see you back. Um, so just to go over again, my name is Jillian. I am Panamanian and Puerto Rican, born here in the Lower East Side of New York City. And so, having said that, you already know we get a lot of different backgrounds and experiences because of that. And why I wanted to start this series is because as this Black Lives Matter movement is becoming one of the biggest civil rights movement of our generation, I it really pained for me to see such a divide and such a lack of self-identity with the African diaspora. Hi everyone, thank you for joining. So I really wanted to discuss why we have such distinct differences in mentalities when it comes to supporting Black brothers and sisters in the Black Lives Matter movement. And I notice it's because there's a lack of self identity and there's a lack of understanding history. So I wanted to uh, educate myself, educate others, and also bring this conversation to light that has touched a lot of us. As I said, I'm Panamanian and Puerto Rican. My Puerto Rican mother is very fair skinned and or light skinned, and my dad is black from Panama. But he also only like he would say, "Oh, we're Panamanian Indian, Panamanian." Dad, you're black. I don't know why. When I look now at our family, and when I went to Panama, and I was like, Dad, why are you just trying to be into this circle when you have to understand we are part of the African diaspora. We are black, and you can't even trace back half of what this. So it was just like self identity crisis when it came to that, and then um, just a lot of lack of support for the immigration movement and understanding that on my Puerto Rican side, it really pains me. So I think understanding our history, why we have these thought processes because of cultural, colonial mentalities that have been really trying to change how we look at one another, causing a divide. And that's one of the things too that we're going to discuss today about media, how media plays a role in it, and government. Media and government are hand in hand in this whole situation. Government even funds media in certain levels, so they push that narrative, which really helps change mentalities and perspectives without people realizing it. So that being said, today we're going to talk a little bit about history and history that I just learned, um, which was to me just mind-boggling. I mean, I'm from New York, so I guess public schools are whitewashed history classes. So now when you start Googling things yourself and access to technology and information, it really opens your mind. So that's one thing too that I discussed last week. In order to break these cycles, we have to educate ourselves first. First, educate yourself. Because if we're just going off of hearsay and our opinions that are not fact based, we're going to be perpetuating things we don't even realize. We are going to be subconsciously continuing a cycle. So we want to cut these cycles of prejudice, of colorism within our own people. Okay, how we talk to people, the words we use. In different countries, if you say morena, if you say negra, if it's a very fine line. And if you don't want to perpetuate racism or prejudice within people, it's best to first listen and then educate yourself. So that's what we're trying to do today. So that being said, Juneteenth just passed, right? And we well, Fourth of July is coming up, and Juneteenth passed, And as we are now in the cusp of 4th of July, I wanted to go over, um, Juneteenth a little bit more again, because it really does have a huge significance in Texas and Mexico and ICE and everything that's happening currently today. A lot of people like to say, oh, but why are you bringing up the past and race and slavery? A lot of people have said this to me. Oh, you're always bringing up slavery. You're always bringing up the past. Yes, I am Panamanian. I am Black. Uh, we come in all shades. So yes, just to answer some questions there. Uh, Going through Juneteenth and understanding why Texas played a role in that, they are the ones that didn't want to acknowledge slavery from the very beginning. Just a little information: Mexico abolished slavery in 1830. 1830. And when Mexico had a part of Texas and the whole Alamo and all these wars that were happening between land, they still were not going to go through with slavery at any point. So when the United States was trying to pass people going to, extraditing slaves, saying, oh no, if they get sent over there free, they should go over there back, right? They should send us back. Mexico was saying, no, we're not going to send any free slaves back. Once they come here, they're free. So I wasn't aware that Mexico was part of the Underground Railroad. Mexico played a huge part in that because we kind of assumed that they were all going to the north. But if they were in the south already, it was closer for them to go to Mexico. So Mexicans and Texans that were a part of the Underground Railroad would help send lots of slaves back to Mexico, through Mexico. And once they were there, they were free because already in 1830, it was free. So here I'm going to, okay. And so 1830, Mexican's president abolished slavery. So now they were part of the Underground Railroad. To me, it boggled my mind because I had no idea. And even so much so, the laws that protected slaves once they were there. Because remember, they were trying to, America was always trying to get people to bring the slaves back. Oh no, you found some of our slaves, bring them back. Mexico was saying, no, we're not going to fall for that. So imagine 1830, Mexico freed slaves. And then in 1863 is when we did that, or when the United States did that. And even in 1863, that was January 1st, 1863, Texas was the last state to want to acknowledge it. And it didn't take until June of 1865. Okay, June 19th, 1865, for the U.S. to have enough troops to go in and basically push Texas to acknowledge that slavery was abolished. So I think we give Abraham Lincoln a lot of credit for stuff that was already happening in Mexico first. And it really surprises me now, the relationship between Texas and Mexico and ICE, and how the media tries to perpetuate that, that there's such divide. Oh, this only Black Lives Matter movement happens when a Black person dies, and we need to have such an understanding of union in this matter, because really we were all helping each other out. And when I say we, I'm from Panama. You know, once through Mexico, all of the slave trade went through the Atlantic, the transatlantic states that went through Latin Americas, because those were where the farming happened, the sugar, the bananas, and all the exports were going all around the world from there. So Texas also was able to really push this narrative for themselves because of the free labor. And that free labor gave them a little bit of power because they were able to support their troops in that sense. And Mexico had already freed their slaves a long time before that. So, when we look at resources, when we look at people in power, we have to look at it in the views of history and the past, because people like to dismiss the past and dismiss history as if it has nothing to do with today's modern day, laws. And they do. And even with Tulsa happening, with the understanding, with everyone's like, oh, I didn't know about Tulsa. I didn't know about the race war, the bombings and the race war that happened over there. You didn't know because only just till 2020 was it allowed to be put in books. And if you look up, if you research the way that Tulsa, Oklahoma had suppressed this information, it was purpose. It was purposely. So we have to understand that without understanding history, we are going to cause division between ourselves. So I wanted to really dive into why it's so important to educate ourselves, because we're allowing media to do it. And we're allowing media to do it very poorly for us. I mean, with Facebook, it has allowed these little clips to be shown. And once we see a little clip, we're like, okay, I saw this clip and now I'm educated. That's not how it should work, okay? If you see a clip and it interests you, research it further. Go into university and journals that have used studies and peer-reviewed studies in order to back that source up, okay? We cannot see a picture and assume anything. We have to back it up with more and more information. I have a background in biomedical informatics, and it is a type of research. So we learned something that I talked about last week called the CRAP test. You could look it up. It's CRAP test. It's literally called the CRAP test, to see if it's crap. I don't know why they did it like that, but it just happened to beautifully work out. So Google CRAP test. It's about current, reliability, accountability, and it really does help you break down how to look up reliable sources. Even as vegans, as I spoke last time, as we are vegans as well, we have to look up our research, right? We have to see what is reliable sources as to the information we're being given, because a lot of the information we were given about nutrition was not reliable sources. As you know, we had this big milk campaign a long time ago, Got Milk, it's healthy for you. A lot of athletes were behind it and actors. And it was supposed to be a thought that it was healthy because it's helping these athletes, when there is no data that supports that it actually stops osteoporosis at any bone density. It actually doesn't do anything. It just gives you fat, because milk is for a baby cow, uh, to make him a bigger calf, and that fat and hormones is sustaining that baby. So we really have to understand who is teaching us, and we cannot allow media and advertisements to teach us and then say, yes, I formulated an opinion and that opinion is solid. No, the opinion has to be based on facts. So I always encourage people, in order to break these cycles and in order to really make sure that we are not perpetuating prejudice and racism, that we are educating ourselves and not allowing to not allowing the media to really make those narratives for us and change us. Because remember, they put a lot of money into subliminal messages. We know this, right? We kind of say, oh yeah, advertisement, billion-dollar companies, but they're billion-dollar companies because they're teaching us things that we're not even realizing. So we really have to be on top of that, especially now during the Black Lives Matter movement. If we have any questions, you can post questions. Uh, just remember to be mindful of questions and not your own things here. I'm trying to read. We can take questions in a moment. I don't know who this person is that's posting here these questions, but just post your questions here and we'll talk about it. Okay. So back to the conversation. So we have a long history in the Latin community, the Latinx community, of colonialism. And colonialism is only looked at under so in some cultures, perpetuated under the person who actually colonized. For example, Puerto Ricans that I know, at least a majority of them, are very high on um, perpetuating only Spaniard backgrounds, are saying, oh, I'm proud I have a Spaniard background, but we kind of don't, some people, and not all, they do say, okay, I have that Taino background, I did this background. We are all mixed. And even if you have not done your genetic background, you cannot even say, I'm studying genetics as we speak. And it is very hard to say, yes, I am a specific, especially if you're Latinx. So you cannot only represent one group, and then they're representing the group that raped, pillaged, and came and took resources. Remember, Puerto Rico is a commonwealth. What does commonwealth literally mean? Sharing wealth, right? Is Puerto Rico currently sharing the commonwealth of the United States? No. But it's the pride of the Puerto Rican to say, yes, I come here and I have citizenship automatically. So we have to really cut these things out. If we're going to say commonwealth, and we have to say, but it's not common because over there, they're just stripping resources and bringing it to the US and then leaving Puerto Rico poor. So poor that they had to come here to work in order to get citizenship. You're not coming here and not working and not getting the benefits of the United States. They're not having that. So it is a very colonial mentality that we have to really cut out. Um, my Panamanian side, um, they're from La Chorrera, which is a mountain area, and there is such a mix of cultures there. We have African and Indian as well as colonized. So we cannot just, I mean, we have to recognize that we are mixed. And unfortunately, a lot of that mix from our heritage was involuntary. Okay. A lot of people don't want to recognize the rape that was happening back then and then be proud of that now as a culture. So it's just kind of like brushed aside. But we have to recognize that Spaniards didn't come here and want equality with people. They wanted to come for resources. And so with that, when we look at things now, um, we are actually, oh, so I'm going to speak about nutrition in the next podcast. This is our final episode for part 4. And this is our final episode for part 4. So I have a question here. Why did I call myself an I'm Latina? Latinos are black. Surprise, surprise, right? I just finished speaking about history and about how we are so mixed at this point. We are part of the Black and African diaspora. Okay, in America, Americans here have a different understanding of race than people who are in Latin America. And why is that? Because the transatlantic slave trade was happening just at the same time, and all this colonialism was happening all at the same time. We have colonizers bringing slaves, they want to take slaves, they're going here, doing that. We are mixed. We are black. Especially my Panamanian side can trace back closer to being black because my grandmother's black. My grandmother's black. My dad's black. If you want to go see on my Panarican underscore vegan, you can see my family. Okay, you can see I have it on. I don't have it private. I have it public because it's just family pictures. I don't. I'm not private like that. I don't care. So we have to break these mental cycles that we are not part of the black community. We are part of the black community. If we have people that are in our family that are darker skinned, that are lighter skinned, this is just genetics because we are all mixed. I have family that have blue eyes, green eyes. I have family that's black with curly hair. It is mixed. So we have to understand that Latinx people are part of this community. Even if we look at history, as I was just saying before, with the Mexican and Texas. Mexico had part of Texas, and Texas wanted part of Mexico, but Texas had the backing up of the US and they were using free labor, right? And that helped them to take back certain parts. Mexico, this battle has been happening for a long time, but we are still part of that land. We are part of the Americas, and part of the Americas is not only indigenous, Indian, and even black cultures are Indian. Okay, so we have to recognize our culture and dig deep. We have to research. We have to not allow just Facebook media to determine what our identity is. We have to cannot allow. I've been seeing a lot of people sharing things. I share things on Facebook all the time, but best believe I'm researching those things further. And when we say research, we're not talking about looking at biased companies, biased media. How do we look at biased media? .orgs. You have to look at .orgs. What are those motives of the .orgs? Like VegFest is a .org, right? But they tell you what their mission is right off the bat. We are here to bring veganism to the Black community, okay? And then you could go on blackvegfest.org, check them out, go see more for yourself, educate yourself on what Black Veg Fest is about. Because we have been always prevention for diseases, education, okay, and political education and veganism education, okay, for the community. And we also have 7 points of white allyship, especially happening now for Black Lives Matter, in order to support one another in this community. Because veganism is a very broad spectrum, but a lot of people pocket it, and we need to bring people in. And it even has excluded Black people in that narrative. And so why we have created Black Veg Fest. We want to highlight Black vegan vendors. We want to highlight Black vegan athletes and educators and things like that. So please check out blackvegfest.org. Going back to .orgs that are trying to give information that are media based when it comes to what you see on Facebook. Like, for example, like mentioned last week, when we talk about veganism and people say, oh, but soy is this and soy is that. If you look back on who perpetuated that, it was the Breast Cancer Association, who is backed by milk companies, because when they have races and charities for for Breast Cancer Association, the milk companies are the ones that are supporting the Breast Cancer Association. They are giving out milk products. So we have to see who is our sources. Use the CRAP test. And so saying that, going back to understanding self-identity in the Latin community, it is a very big issue. We had media show that the division in Harlem with Dominicans chasing away Black Lives Matter protesters or just protesters. And there has been a huge divide in Haitian and Dominican relations because of media perpetuation as well, because of who was in power. Um, as we talked about a little bit last week as well, when you look at news and even media in Latin America, it's very whitewashed. You don't see people of different backgrounds who are represented in the culture. They're not represented on TV or on advertisements. So this is not just an American problem. This is across the Americas. And then when they come here, immigrating here from DR, from PR, from Mexico, everyone coming here, we cannot allow American media to continue the perpetuation this prejudice within our own people. Um, we have family members that are Black or that came out genetically Black, right? Because we have Black in our blood, and and then we kind of shun it like, oh, they're just tanner or they just this. So we really have to understand that sometimes subconsciously we are perpetuating prejudice within this, and sometimes it's not our fault. We're raised, if you're raised in the U.S. and the public school system, you're most likely raised with a whitewashed history. So it's kind of like you have to, it feels uncomfortable at first, right? It feels uncomfortable at first to be like, no, I'm not prejudiced or racist or perpetuating anything. No. But then we're walking around in a white supremacist society. Why is it a white supremacist society? Because it was colonized by white supremacists who enslaved people, right? So we still have those systems in place. And whether we like to believe it or not, till this day, those systems are in our laws, in our education, in our judicial system, in our policing. So we have to see them for what they are. We cannot be extreme and ignore it and say that it doesn't exist. So that being said, next week we are going to talk about food. I am a chef as well. I have opened up a business because I had dealt with tumors. I had tumors on my right leg since I was 13. I've had radiation, chemo, surgery, and I want to discuss about what veganism looks like for us today and how that we can change our mindset. I know a lot of people feel like they have to have meat on their plate and it's like a necessity to have it. And why is that? Why do we feel like we have to have meat in our plate? Advertisements as well, culturally. Culturally, when I say culturally, I mean most modern cultures because even our ancestors could not afford to have meat every day. We have brainwashed ourselves to think that we need meat in our plate every day. We do not need meat on our plate every day. Even our ancestors didn't eat like that because they did not afford it, and they were growing more vegetables because it was more affordable. This goes for even how we feed people now in mass. We feed them in quantities. Soy is one of the most mass produced, right? Corn. These are vegetables because they are easily grown. So it was more sustainable to grow our own food and vegetables, but we have lost the knowledge to do that because they're not trying to teach us that. In Cuba, actually, I went to Cuba when I was about 17 through a school. We went like secretly through our school, and they teach agriculture as a part of a university class. Everyone has to learn agriculture. Imagine here if everyone had to learn agriculture, how the dependency on supermarkets would be cut. So we have to realize that the system that we live in, this colonialized system that we live in, has made us need to be dependent on supermarkets. And supermarkets, as you know, is hard to find vegan products unless it's vegetables or rice and beans, right? So even that, they've even marked up. I mean, I lived in Manhattan, and not till I moved to Brooklyn did I see the prices so different. And I'm like, I really need to. I love Brooklyn. Was born and raised in LES, but when I moved to Brooklyn, I absolutely loved it. And I was like, the prices in Manhattan are crazy. And when I was hosting Airbnb, the Europeans were like, "Oh, this your vegetables are way too expensive here, way too expensive." So they don't want us eating healthy. They don't want us eating right, and they want us depending on medicine and being sick. And why is because just a little sick, enough to work, right? And we're used to aches and pains. um I had these tumors that were taking over my right leg, and I almost had my leg amputated, but I had to go on chemotherapy. And so at the time I was told about, veganism, and I kind of shunned it. I was like, this is just what it is. I have no control over this. I just have tumors. I didn't think that tumors can be stopped until I started learning in college biomedical informatics, which has genetics and epigenetics. Okay, epigenetics are outside changes that mutate your genes. Smoking, pollution, and food. We always look at smoking as, yeah, you can get cancer. That's an outside, right? You're not born with lung cancer like that unless you have, that genetic mutation. But smoking and pollution, we kind of know that happens, right? But then food, nah, food doesn't do that. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And so it can change your genes, cause cancers, just like it can change your blood for diabetes, for high blood pressure, for cholesterol, for all your organs. We cannot just recognize one part and then exit out another part. So when I finally woke up and said, okay, I'm going to go vegan for my health first because if this means I can check off the list and this metastasizing into another thing, I'm going to do what I can to save myself. So just learning about trying to disassociating what media had taught me all these years is a really big thing. And we really have to be careful about the media that we're following. I actually follow on Facebook, Fox, and all these other, I don't like them. I just follow them just to see the BS that's happening and also compare news stories. Like I like to compare CNN to this one, to Fox, to Independent. And I really like to understand the perspectives on the news. And we do have to be careful at the type of news that we're listening to, and the type of opinions we're formulating. Because when everyone's like, "Oh, it's just my opinion; it's private." Right. Opinions are never private because as we're walking to work, as we're seeing things, as we speak to people, our opinions are shown through those actions. Okay. It's kind of silly to say opinions and things are never affect anyone, but they do. And when we stay quiet, they affect people just as much as well. Um, I I have a neighbor that shared with me recently that a friend didn't stick up for her when someone said something racist to her, and it hurt her. So if you're staying quiet during these Black Lives Matter movements, if you're staying quiet and you have Black friends, it hurts us. It hurts them. Okay? It hurts me when people don't stick up for me. It hurts me when um, you know, you stay quiet. It just shows complacency. Okay. So, and it's tiring for people to always have to stick up for themselves all the time, right? This is why we created the 7 points of allyship for white vegans in this time to support and be in solidarity for the Black Lives Matter movement and for Black vegans and just for Black people everywhere. It's an education process on how to do this. Like I said, education and educating ourselves in all forms, our culture, educating our history is cutting cycles. Um, we know this as a factor, like, defund the police and give it to public schools, give more money to, yes, but we have to also educate ourselves too daily. It is part of it is part of what we have to do. It's just part of it. I can't stress it enough because if we don't, like I said, and we stay quiet and we formulate opinion and we let media and Facebook clips formulate our opinions, we are going to be perpetuating things subconsciously we don't even understand. Okay. So one of the things that I was just going back again that we talked about was the relationship between Mexico and Texas. I wish I learned about this in school. The relationship, how deep it goes, and how it goes till today with borders and ICE and all this back and forth, and Texans really standing firm on like, oh no, we are this, and no, you were part of Mexico at one point, and Mexico was pretty open to helping slaves cross over to be free because Mexico was abolished slavery in 1830. Okay, the U.S. didn't do it till 1863, and Texas didn't even recognize it till 1865. This is why a lot of Black African Americans and Black people around the world now do not recognize July 4th because it was not freedom for any slave. July 4th, June January 1st, 1863 is when when it was signed, but not all the states complied. Texas did not want to comply, they did not want to recognize it, and they wanted to continue using slaves for free labor. So it wasn't until June 19th, 1865. And I think once we understand the relationship between Mexico and the US, we can understand why Mexico has been the way it's been. And even I don't know if anyone has watched Narcos. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm mentioning Narcos now, the movie, the show. There's with Chapo and like the relationship with the corruption over there. There is so much history to that relating to the US and not in a good way. The US really did understand everything, giving them guns, creating the corruption because they know that if they did not were not corrupt, they would have more power because Mexicans already were taking over parts of land. So it really does play a role in, you know, understanding our history. Really understands we really understand everything as a whole. I never liked history before growing up. I like science. Science was my thing. As you could tell, I was a biomedical, still informatics major now. And but as I grown older, I'm 35 now. I really understand the importance of history, and um, I wish that I did sooner so that I could understand it better. But I was making connections as I saw a lot of hypocrisy happening, with a lot of the political parties and things like that, and how the motivations behind those things. So, history, as boring as it might seem to some people, it is so important to educate ourselves. So, and that goes for understanding not just American history. Again, we're talking about Latin American history as well. And in relation to the slave trade, a lot of slaves were in Latin Americas. A lot of us are integrated even beyond the timelines that we can look at. So, we need to understand that we are part of the African diaspora. Are there any questions for me today? Let's see. Thank you for everyone who's sticking with me and joining and listening in. Um, I am going to go over a series next week, Sunday, 12 o'clock. We're going to go food shopping together. We're going to go food shopping on what it means to go vegan, what it means to be vegan food shopping. If you want to tune in on that, we're going to go to a few supermarkets that I really like. Actually, maybe just one or two that are close by because I have an hour and I'm not going to take you traveling with me to these other ones. But we're going to go to some supermarkets that I really like and that are affordable, what we can eat on a pinch, what products and what to look out for. I know that even as vegans for a long time, there's new products coming out. I'm going to do also a cooking demo on some of my favorite foods that are sustainable. I don't know how many of you cook with dried beans. Dried beans. How many cook with dried beans? That is something I learned being vegan later on, wanting to be sustainable. Cooking with dried beans saves a lot of money. I just did a video with Bronx Eats and Plant Powered NY. You can see it on YouTube, Plant Powered NY. And I did a demo on how to cook with dried beans because dried beans are so sustainable. You literally could put 2 cups of dried beans in the pressure cooker and feed a family of four for 3 days. And that 2 cups is only a dollar to $2. So, and beans have so much protein, so much fiber, so much nutrients. So we really need to educate ourselves on foods that are sustainable, that are life giving, foods that like quinoa that are that should be more affordable, but unfortunately they're not. That's also due to a lot of colonialization. Quinoa is a Mexican grain, and I had no idea it was even a Spanish grain. I felt so ashamed learning that fact like a few years back. I was like, this is from Mexico? How come I never knew that? I thought this was just like what you eat in like super healthy places here in the US where I never would have touched. You know what I mean? Like kale and quinoa, like, I just didn't think that it was anything to do with Latin America. So we have to understand that a lot of these grains, a lot of these healthy foods are part of our ancestry, but we have lost that knowledge because we have relied on supermarkets and relied on the dependency of these types of markets. So we're trying to bring back the education of how to cook healthy, how to cook affordable. I'll try to do a meal under for like $3 meal, and we'll do like a really good spread. And I'll do it right here in the studio. We have a cooking availability to do, so stay tuned for those coming up. And any ideas that you want for me to cook, actually I have a few things I'm gonna go. But if anyone has like, hey, how do you cook this or how do you cook that? Let me know. I do lasagnas that people won't even know that taste like me, and I might give that recipe away if there's enough people watching. my carne molida, ground beef, and it is such a game changer for a lot of people. I put that in my empanadas, I put that in my lasagna. You could put that in like in pasta bolognese, any sloppy joe. If you just add a little more tomato sauce, like honestly, the possibilities of eating vegan now are endless. Unfortunately, excuse me, a lot of the processed foods are expensive, but they're getting cheaper. Now, they're expensive, and I don't condone you eating them every day. A lot of these mock meats, I love eating Beyond Burgers and Just Eggs and Gardein products, but they are not supposed to be eaten every day. We're just used to eating them every day because being raised carnivore, the mentality is you have to have meat on your plate. Even advertisement, remember, we're talking about media. Even advertisements say, oh, the plate with the egg and the bacon, and it has to be on the plate, or else you don't have food, or else you didn't eat. And then, it really is a subliminal messaging as to why you feel like you need to have a type of mock meat or meat on your plate. So, in order to break that, we're going to give you options on how to feel fulfilled, how to feel good with eating. So, I'm going to see if my volume changed up here. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So, I want to really expand a new series. I'm going over a new series next week on how to eat vegan on a budget. I'm going to go over I'm born and raised in the Lower East Side, and so I'm going to go through some Spanish, American, everything that I grew up eating, you're going to see being cooked here. And we're going to go through it on an affordable basis. We're going to go through how to cook dried beans, right? We went through a pandemic, and the dried beans stayed behind because people don't know how to cook it as much, right? The meat went first, and all these other things went first. Why we don't want to be dependent on canned food? There's a lot of sodium in canned food. So we're going to go over next week how to cook with dried beans safely, how to use a pressure cooker. Yeah, pressure cookers are kind of dangerous. A lot of people are scared to use them, but we're going to go over how to do pressure cooking um, and how to use that properly, how to make a good pot of rice. I got used to making pots of rice through a steam rice cooker, because it uses less oil. But now I'm learning again to kind of use the pot just in case, like, my rice cooker breaks. And so we really just learning again how to cook sustainably and healthy and not be reliant on products. I will use I will do a series or cook with some products, but I want to also show you how to cook without products and feel fulfilled. If there's any questions, please feel free to hit me up. Again, my name is Jillian from VegFest, and we were talking today about colorism in the Latinx community. What is colorism? Colorism is a type of prejudice or bias within your own community. And why do we feel this way? Because we feel like we're not black. We feel like we're not part of the African diaspora. A lot of people, when I say we, I'm talking about Latinx community. They feel very segregated from this. Oh, I'm not. Oh, when I look whiter, you look whiter because you have that gene from the Spaniard, but you also have family that's black because you're black too. Because there was a lot of mixing. Genetics does this, right? So why we have people that look such like a diaspora of colors is because we are part of the black community, and we have to recognize all of our ancestry. We cannot just recognize one part of our ancestry and then feel confused. We have family that are Costa Rican, that are Puerto Rican, that are Panamanian, that are Cuban, and when you go to these countries, you always see black people there too, because we are part of we are black as well. So we have to understand our heritage in a broader spectrum. We cannot be so enclosed. And when we are only looking at it based on just, oh, your color and not your family or your time or your, we really leave a lot of people out. We cause segregation within our own community, and don't and when it comes to Black Lives Matter, I've seen a lot of people not being very quiet. So, and it hurts me. But we do see a lot of a lot of solidarity too between the Latinx community as well. But we also see a lot of not. So we are trying to tackle why we see such a distinct mentality, why there's a disconnect. Why is there a disconnect between the Black and Latino community when we are part of one another? Now, there is something that happened when Mexico abolished slavery in 1830. There was an integration happening. A lot of Mexicans and Indians and Aztecs and colonial and everybody was integrating. What America was doing was what? Segregating. America was the opposite. Once slavery was abolished in 1865, not 63, not all the states were recognized June 19th, 1865. Once that happened, there was a segregation. So it was illegal to marry or to have children or to be in schools or to be in the same bus as anyone of a different color. So we have to understand that the Americas treated slavery after abolition differently. Different Americas, different countries in the Americas treated it differently than America itself. America was very like, nope, you over there, I'm over here. In Mexico, if you research, you'll see there's a picture of a timeline of how everyone was integrating. Now, it wasn't such always a good thing why they were integrating. They were integrating to kind of whitewash a lot of things, and it really depended on who was president at the time. So you have to understand that a lot of Mexicans are Black. There's huge communities in every country, and it's not just a community. I mean, obviously, people travel, and this is how we all become, right? People in heritage. So it just boggles my mind how a lot of people can pick and choose who they want to be a part of when we absolutely know that we have a huge history of being a part of the African story, especially with the slave trade happening. 10 million slaves came across the transatlantic, and for every three, I think, or four, two stayed in Latin America. So millions of slaves stayed in the Latin Americas. And when I say Latin Americas, we're talking about South and Central, right? So we really have to recognize that Latinos are Black too. And once we do that, we're going to have a different mindset. But a lot of things that happen when people immigrate is assimilation in a way where we're assimilating and wanting to be a part of a pocket that Americans have tried to put in here. I've noticed that even with 4th of July, it's like 4th of July, let's let the burgers and putting the flag up, and it doesn't have an inclusion of the diversity that America is, at least that I know growing up in New York. So we really do have to recognize why things have been put in place and who put them in place. And once we educate ourselves, we can be allies, and we can just cut the ties, cut these cycles that continue to perpetuate division between communities. We don't want division in our communities. We want united. We want solidarity so that we can show that things have to change, that laws have to change, that funding has to change so that we can better all of our communities. Remember, when we do better, everyone does better. Everyone is helping. We're all supposed to be helping each other here. But once we're divided, it causes a lot of division, and that's what I think people want. I think that a lot of people don't want united for this reason. So we have to be educating ourselves all the time. So next week, Sunday, I'll see you for cooking, for food. We're gonna do vegan food. We're gonna go through what it means to be eating vegan now in 2020 in a pandemic, how we can go food shopping. We're going to go to a supermarket together. We're going to go through the aisles and say, oh, this is vegan. Did you know this is vegan? Did you know? Okay. And we're going to cook that Wednesday. So we're going to do a series the next three. I think I'll do the next four because I'm going to do some cooking and we're going to do food shopping together as a series for cooking, okay, for veganism, how to eat different foods. And I'm going to be happy to show you some of my recipes and go through supermarkets and products. We're going to talk a lot of different products, almond milk, soy milk. I try to stay around away from almond as much because it uses more water. I don't like it in my coffee as much. But which products are great? Trader Joe's. We're gonna go through Trader Joe's because that's one of my favorite spots. We're even gonna visit Wegmans um, because they do have some affordable stuff now. And what is affordable, what is not, there is a big difference too. So we're gonna go through that as a series there. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate anyone who's come in and give their commentary, um, given questions for this series. I know that a lot of us have experiences, different experiences, um, as Black and Latinx and just Afro Latina. I don't. People like to throw so many names. I don't like to do that. It just a lot of these names were created to cause division as well. So, oh, you're black, you're not Latina. Oh, you're this. No, black Latinx are black too. So I don't really feel comfortable using those terms, but people only kind of recognize it like that. But I thank you for joining us. Um, Please go to blackvegfest.com